We have a guest coming onto the show to talk about something that actually sounds pretty exciting because it's very grassrootsy, and we'll let Arianna Huffington tell us about it. Arianna, thanks. Welcome back to the Young Turks.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year. Tell us a little bit. I'm reading a little bit about this press release, and it's pretty inspired. Give us a little background to what happened and how it started, because the story is actually pretty good too.
Well, it started over dinner just before Christmas. Rob Johnson, who's with the Roosevelt Institute, and Nick Penniman, who runs the Huffington Post Investigative Fund, and Eugene Jarecki, who's a wonderful filmmaker, and Alexis Johnson, who's a political consultant, and I were having dinner, and we're talking about how frustrated so many of us have been at the way that Wall Street is benefiting from government action and Main Street is suffering. And we felt it was time that we actually help people do something, move beyond resignation and anger, where so many people find themselves, into action. And so Eugene had the idea of turning It's a Wonderful Life, the movie with Mr. Bailey, the good banker,
right,
and Mr. Potter, the bad banker, and the community being empowered, into a movie, a little video movie about our plight today and the contrast between the Wall Street banks and the community banks and credit unions.
Right.
And that led to a campaign, really, a moveyourmoney.info campaign, with a video, with a post from Rob Johnson and me, with, hundreds of thousands of people putting their zip codes into a database that institutional risk analysts have provided free of charge, where people can find out what the local banks are near where they live. These are all banks that have good ratings. And also, let's remind your listeners that all these banks are guaranteed by the FDIC. Deposits up to $250,000 are
right,
just as guaranteed at community banks as they are at the too big to fail banks.
Right. And now, Arianna, are there any drawbacks to doing that? I mean, I moved, and we're not talking, unfortunately, about a tremendous amount of money. I moved into my neighborhood. A new community bank opened up, a branch of it in my neighborhood, and I moved money into it, and I love it. I like going to the bank, and I moved it out of a big bank.
Right.
And it felt good for that reason as well. But I also left that account open at the big bank just in case, because of, what are the drawbacks of doing that? Are there any that people should be careful of?
Well, first of all the banks that you would get to through this database that we are making available on the site are banks that are solvent and banks that are doing well. So in that sense, you are going to be going to a safe bank.
Right.
Also, we are offering a link to credit unions if you prefer to go to a credit union. The things that the benefits really are that you're not likely to have these hidden fees and the sudden fee hikes that you get with a big bank.
And with this, we should point out also with the banking rules that are coming down, the changes in the banking rules that are going to favor these hidden fees, that are going to favor the consumers, the banks are now finding other loopholes and other ways, the big banks especially, of tacking on different fees, rate hikes, things like that.
Exactly.
They're almost cramming for that now.
Yes, and we have we've launched a project through our citizen journalism team. And we're getting dozens of stories from people who've suffered in the hands of big banks, including people who've gotten overdraft fees even though they were not really overdrawn because of systematic errors. And so what we are saying is that this is really an opportunity both to take action and not to be resigned and frustrated, and to actually, do something which is really an important step in terms of how these big banks are constantly undermining any kind of reform. You know how many tens of millions of dollars they've spent lobbying against financial reform.
Yeah.
So here we have an opportunity to really take an action that shows that we can empower the smaller banks.
Yeah, no, it's true, and I find I went through this thing where I only buy books from independent bookstores, and my little independent bookstore closed, and then another one opened, and I don't know why I don't apply that to other things, because the service and the attention that I get at my new bank versus my old bank, forgetting that it feels good to be pulling out of a bank, an institution that is taking advantage of taxpayers, but
exactly.
It also feels good. I mean, there's just a sort of an everyday kind of good feeling about it that you're helping a smaller business. Now, what are the 4 banks? You mentioned the 4 banks. What are the 4 banks, and what is the cutoff? Like, are there 10 banks, or are there just the big 4 banks that we should?
Well, we are actually talking about the big 6 banks, although we are focusing on the big 4 because. The big 4 are the ones that have most of the deposits, and they are Citibank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and J.P. Morgan Chase.
Right.
Because Goldman Sachs takes deposits, but they only 15% of their business is deposits, and most people who are likely to invest in Goldman Sachs tend to be investors.
Yeah, they're not a typical retail
bank. They're not
bank
exactly
either,
a typical.
Yeah.
So all these 6 banks are the too big to fail banks, but the ones we are focusing on are the big 4 where most of the deposits are. One more thing, Chunk, is the fact that remember when originally the bailout was sold to Americans. The idea was that these banks would get this bailout money and then lend back to small businesses, to the communities. Well, not only did that not happen, but lending was reduced by $100 billion.
And what percentage of that is the lending market? Do you know? I don't know that you know that. I'm just
sorry,
curious. I'm just curious.
You said?
Yeah, what percentage of money lent? Because it's a lot of money, but what percentage of that?
Well, they're now lending $100 billion less than they were lending before the bailout.
And that's what I'm asking. Do you know, Arianna, what percentage
of
money
of
lent
the overall
that is?
lending?
Yeah,
no,
I don't know.
But of course,
it's a big number.
This lack of lending is one of the main problems when it comes to creating jobs and getting the real economy going again.
Right.
And so most of the small businesses are more likely to get loans from the local banks that know them.
Right, okay.
There's a different element of comfort and trust that comes into that.
The website is www.moveyourmoney.info. And we're talking to Arianna Huffington. Arianna, do you ever get together with friends and just not talk about anything important or serious? It's unbelievable. It's like a salon when you go out when you have dinner. But no, this is actually an exciting thing. I like it because it as I said in the intro, it's a little grassrootsy. Wes, do you?
I liked Arianna's book on Picasso.
You liked her book on Picasso. Well, see, that's something that...
I will send you an autographed coffee if you move your money.
How about
that?
I
don't know.
Really?
Think about it.
Here's why. Because I think most of the banking problems we have in the country are systemic and have to do with credit and usury laws that were changed in the 1970s. So that if you want to really understand why manufacturing has gone down in this country, it's because if I'm a bank, whether I'm a local bank or a larger bank, and I can make 20% on my money charging somebody interest, or 6 or 7% by backing manufacturing, the money's all going to flow into finance. And for smaller banks, I grew up in Colorado in the 1980s, and that's the savings and loans crisis, and those were all small community.
Those were community banks. But the point is, this is more, forgetting what the systemic problems, and I think you'll probably agree, Arianna, with our banking community and our banking history are, this is a reaction to 4 big businesses that took advantage of American taxpayers.
And continue to.
And continue to do that. So
and that's the thing, they continue.
So,
I mean, as you said, they continue. Instead of investing in America, really, investing in businesses, using the money that they continue to get at almost 0% interest from the government, and with government guarantees that are continuing, and they use that money to trade in derivatives and to get, as you said, these large profit margin that otherwise they
Why
don't
can't
have.
Why can't we just pass some laws regulating the derivatives business or regulating the banks? I mean, because and I know
But
I'm being naive that we could ever get those laws
that's
passed,
another
but
conversation too. I mean, that's not this conversation.
Let me just make it very clear. We are not claiming that move your money is a panacea.
Right.
That we are going to stop trying to do other things. You know, absolutely, there is a huge effort, as you know, on the Hill to regulate derivatives, but it's not going anywhere, and it is not going to happen because at the moment, unfortunately, as even so-called powerful senators are going to acknowledge, the bankers are more powerful on the Hill. Remember, the bankers won when it came to cramp-down legislation, which is really a major tragedy because thousands of people would still be in their homes if cramp-down legislation had gone through,
right.
and the bankers stopped it. So,
well, Barney Frank disagrees with you. He does think he's an eternal optimist on this. He thinks that derivatives legislation will happen.
The kind of derivative legislation that Barney Frank has on the bill is meaningless because there are so many loopholes. Right. And these banks are so good at getting around loopholes that unless you have watertight derivative regulation, you are merely going to change one kind of derivative into another, and it's not going to have any real.
I think we're all learning now that every piece of legislation that comes out of Congress has a lot of loopholes, whether it has to do with healthcare or banking or even homeland security. Arianna Huffington, thank you. I moved my money, but I read John Richardson's book on Picasso, so I'm guilty of that. And
I'll send you mine. But
right,
also, I'd love it if you can encourage your listeners, if they decide to move their money, to videotape it or write about it and send it to us. They can put it on the site or send it to Arianna at HuffingtonPost.com.
And there's room on the site to do that at moveyourmoney.info?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, we will do it. Thank you for being a tireless warrior, and we'll move our money. Wait, could you move some of your money into my account, by the way?
Absolutely, anytime. And listen, thank you for the great blogging on the Huffington Post.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. That was awesome.
Way to go, Cenk.
Way to go, Cenk. We'll be back after the break with a very provocative guest. You're listening to Young Turks.